Jason, in the newest of new news in the category of stories the entire internet apparently decided to adopt for the week, we have Travis and Taylor showing up at the Cavs-Knicks playoff game and instantly becoming the center of attention. Not just because they were there, but because when those two step into an arena, the event somehow becomes bigger than the event. Half the people are watching the game, the other half are watching the reaction shots, and then the rest are online turning facial expressions into memes within 30 seconds. That's modern sports culture. You don't just attend a game anymore. You enter a content ecosystem. And buddy, you did not merely go to a basketball game. You and Taylor became a subplot, a trending topic, and a full-blown sports talk radio segment before the fourth quarter even ended. Travis, that's how it goes now, man. You show up, sit down, try to enjoy some basketball, and next thing you know, every camera in the building has found you. And honestly, I get it. That's part of the deal. But for me, it was pretty simple. I was going back home, I was in Cleveland, and I wanted to enjoy a playoff atmosphere in a city that means everything to me. That part was real. That part had nothing to do with headlines or photos or the internet. It was just me being back around the people and the teams and the energy that shaped me. Jason, well, let's start right there then. Other than losing, how was the game, Travis? Because I know you. I know there's a part of you that can enjoy the environment, appreciate the basketball, clap for a good play, all of that. But I also know that when your team is getting hit in the mouth and the other team is making everything, that competitive blood starts boiling. So was it fun, or was it the kind of fun where you say it was great afterward, but inside you were quietly dying possession by possession? Travis, it was both. It was absolutely both. That's kind of the honest answer. The atmosphere was incredible. Cleveland playoff basketball has a pulse to it. There's a tension in the building, there's a belief in the crowd, and there's also that deeply familiar Cleveland anxiety, where every fan in the arena is trying not to get hurt again. So from a pure sports fan perspective, it was awesome to be there. But from the standpoint of wanting to see the Cavs handle business, yeah, that part was rough. The Knicks came in looking like a team that fully believes this is their time. They were sharp, they were confident, they were connected, and every time Cleveland seemed ready to grab some momentum, New York answered with a punch that felt heavier than the last one. Jason, that's what stood out to me, too. The Knicks don't just look hot. They look settled. There's a difference. A team can catch fire for a couple games and win on emotion. But this Knicks run feels like more than that. It feels organized. It feels repeatable. They've got that look where every player knows exactly what the game requires, and nobody seems overwhelmed by the moment. That's why people are starting to ask the real question now, which is not just whether they can come out of the East, but whether the East can win it all. Because on paper, people still love the stars in the West. People still love the records, the big names, the highlight packages. But if you actually watch how New York is playing, there's a seriousness to it that travels. Travis, man, I'm telling you, seeing it in person changed the way I looked at them. Watching on TV is one thing. Being in the building is another. When you're there live, you feel how connected a team is. You can see their body language between possessions. You can hear how quickly they're communicating. You can watch how hard they cut, how fast they rotate, how they respond when something breaks down. That Knicks team is playing real basketball right now. They're not just surviving, they're imposing themselves on people. And yeah, I know the West has stars all over the place. I know there are teams over there with insane talent and better records and all that. I'm not ignoring that. But the Knicks right now are playing like a group that trusts its identity completely. That's dangerous in the playoffs. Jason, that's what I keep coming back to. Everybody loves talking about stars in the postseason, and stars matter, obviously. You need shot creators. You need closers. You need guys who can make chaos look intentional. But what separates teams in these moments is pace control and defensive conviction. That's the part casual fans miss because it doesn't always show up as beautifully in highlights. A step back three gets posted, a dunk gets replayed 10 times. But when one team spends 8 straight possessions, forcing the other team deep into the shot clock, taking them out of rhythm, making every catch difficult, making every decision late, that changes the emotional temperature of a game. Travis, exactly. That's exactly what it felt like in the arena. The Knicks were controlling the tempo in a way that just drains you, and that's what great teams do. They make you play the game they want to play. They dictate where the ball goes, when the shot happens, what kind of shot you settle for. They turn possessions into chores. I remember watching stretches where Cleveland was taking the ball up the floor, and you could feel the clock shrinking before they even got into their action. They'd get to the last 7 seconds, then the last 5, then somebody's forced into a contested jumper or a late clock bailout. And meanwhile, New York comes back the other way, gets a mismatch, finds space, and buries a shot that feels like it counts for 5 points instead of 3. Jason, and those are the moments that crush you. Not just because of the scoreboard, but because of what they do mentally. It's one thing to get beat in a shootout. It's another thing to feel like every good thing you do has to be earned with a pickaxe while the other team is getting daggers on clean looks. Fans can feel that too. A building goes from roaring to anxious in a hurry when the other team keeps answering. That's why I think defense matters so much more in the playoffs. In the regular season, there are too many games, too many travel nights, too many load management conversations, too many stretches where teams are pacing themselves. But in the postseason, effort sharpens, scouting gets detailed, and every weakness is exposed under a spotlight. Travis' defense absolutely becomes the truth serum of the playoffs. You can hide things a little bit in the regular season, you can outscore problems, you can catch teams on bad nights, you can run and gun and live with mistakes because there's another game 2 days later. But in the playoffs, those mistakes become habits and habits become losses. If you can't guard at a high level, if you can't communicate, if you can't rebound, if you can't handle physicality, it gets found. It gets hunted. And New York right now looks like a team that loves the grind part of the game. They don't just tolerate hustling defense, they embrace it. They enjoy making the game ugly for you. Jason. And that's why they're easy to respect, even if they just beat your team. There's something about teams like that. Fans might hate them in the moment, but basketball people appreciate them because they're playing with a kind of honesty. Jalen Brunson is obviously the engine. Josh Hart brings that Villanova toughness and do whatever it takes mentality. Those guys set a tone. They don't act like the hard parts of winning are beneath them. They lean into them. And once a roster starts believing in that style, it becomes contagious. Travis, yeah, Brunson and Hart are huge. They're the type of players everybody in the locker room can follow because their production and their attitude match. And then you get role players stepping up, knocking down big-time shots, swinging momentum, doing the little stuff that becomes big stuff in May. That's when a team gets dangerous. It's not just the stars. It's when the whole group starts feeling like they belong in that moment. And I was happy seeing guys like Shamet make an impact too. Being a Kansas City kid, seeing somebody with those ties come alive on a big stage, you love that even when you're frustrated by the result. That's one of the weird things about being a sports fan and an athlete at the same time. You can appreciate greatness and still hate what it's doing to your team. Jason, that's the mature answer. The immature answer is you were sitting there like, can somebody please miss one shot? Just one. Give me one clank, one rattled out three, one awful possession, something. Because from the memes I saw, there was a moment where your face said exactly that. Travis, oh, there absolutely was. Look, the Knicks could not miss in that stretch. That's the part people don't understand from just looking at the clips afterward. It wasn't just that Cleveland was losing. It was that anytime the Cavs finally scraped together a little energy, got a stop, hit a three, maybe forced a turnover, maybe got the crowd back in it, New York would come right back down and hit a shot that felt cruel. Not just a basket, a morale crusher, the kind of three where your shoulders drop before it even hits the net because you already know what it means. Jason, that's the dagger effect. And people who haven't sat courtside maybe don't fully understand how different it feels live. On television, you see the ball go in and hear the crowd. In the building, you feel the silence that comes right after the other team lands one of those. It's almost physical. It's like air leaving the room. That's why courtside is such an insane experience. You're not just watching the game, you're inside the emotional weather of it. Travis, courtside is the best seat in sports, man. I'll say it forever. If you get a real floor seat at an NBA playoff game, there's nothing like it. The speed, the force, the sound of sneakers, the bodies colliding, the bench reactions, the way the game breathes when you're that close, it changes everything. You come away realizing how ridiculous those athletes are. People joke about it, but it's true. You see one of those guys go baseline, spin through traffic, elevate through contact, and finish at the rim, and your brain almost rejects what you just saw. It looks unreal from that angle. Jason, I remember the first time I had those seats. I walked away thinking, yeah, these dudes are built different. In football, we pride ourselves on size and violence and toughness, and rightfully so. But NBA athletes on the floor are a different type of freak. Their body control is absurd. Their balance is absurd. Their deceleration is absurd. They can be moving at one speed, stop on a dime, rise up, and deliver touch in a packed lane. When you're sitting right there, it stops looking normal. Travis, and the funny part is people online were less interested in the actual basketball than they were in whether the seats looked uncomfortable, which, to be fair, they kind of do on camera. Because the floor in that arena is raised. People don't realize that. They're not just dropping those seats into some naturally perfect setup. That arena has to serve multiple purposes. They've got hockey in there. They've got different events. So when the hardwood goes in, the seating around it gets arranged in a way that can look a little weird on TV. You're kind of down there, close to the floor, and it can seem cramped. Jason, it did look cramped. I'm not going to lie. My knees were hurting just watching the clips. I was thinking, this is amazing access, but there's no chance I'm getting up gracefully if a big shot happens. That's the part people never talk about. It's not just sitting there. It's the mechanics of reacting like a fan when you're wedged into a floor setup. A huge three goes down, and now you're trying to explode upward from what feels like a folding chair bolted into a trench. Travis, exactly. That's harder than it sounds. Everybody sees you sitting courtside and imagines luxury. And sure, it's an amazing experience. But there are definitely moments where you're trying to spring up, celebrate, yell, whatever, and your body's like, we are not ideally positioned for this. It becomes this awkward half stand, half lunge. But you don't care because you're in it. You're close enough to hear players calling coverages, close enough to see coaches reacting, close enough to feel every possession. Jason, the other thing that became its own story was the broadcast mistake, and I need you to relive this because I know it bothered you more than the average person will understand. The announcer said you were from Shaker Heights. Now, to anybody outside Cleveland, that probably sounds close enough. To people who actually know the area, that is a meaningful error. Travis, meaningful might be putting it lightly. I heard that and immediately thought, do your homework. And listen, no disrespect to Shaker Heights. Nothing wrong with Shaker. It's right there. We grew up right next to it. There's familiarity, there's overlap, there's all of that. But I'm from Cleveland Heights. That matters. If you know, you know. Those little geographic details carry identity. When you grow up somewhere, those lines mean something, even when they're just a few blocks apart. So hearing Shaker Heights felt like one of those little national media moments where you realize they know the broad version of the story, but not the real one. Jason, and that's why hometown people get protective. It's not pettiness for the sake of pettiness. It's the feeling that your story gets flattened when outsiders tell it. Those neighborhoods and those school systems and those city lines shaped who you are. They shaped the way people see themselves. So when somebody gets it wrong, even by a little, it lands bigger than it seems. It's like saying, yeah, I know where you're from, while clearly not knowing where you're from. Travis, exactly. It's not a war crime. Nobody needs to issue an apology. But it's one of those things where you're just like, come on, man. If you're going to mention it right. Cleveland Heights is Cleveland Heights. That's part of my identity. That's part of what I'm proud of. And being back in that city, even just for a game, always taps into that. Jason, that was the other layer of this whole thing. People saw Taylor at the game and immediately turned it into this larger symbolic thing, like this was your attempt to recruit her into Cleveland sports trauma. Which honestly is a hilarious concept because being introduced to Cleveland fandom through a playoff loss is about as authentic as it gets. Travis, that was the funniest part. Everybody acting like I brought her there for some initiation ceremony. Like this was a strategic operation to turn her into a lifelong Cleveland sports fan. No, man, it was a date night. It was a fun night at a playoff game in my hometown. That's it. I love bringing her into worlds that mean something to me. I love sharing things that I've always enjoyed. That doesn't mean I'm out here trying to convert her into suffering through every Browns season and every heartbreaking playoff run. I'm just letting her experience things that are part of my life. Jason, but in fairness, what she did get was a very pure Cleveland sports experience. Not just a loss, but the emotional shape of it. The hope, the surge, the crowd energy, the feeling that maybe tonight is the night, and then the slow realization that the other team just has your number. Sports radio in Cleveland had a field day with it because the joke writes itself. Welcome to the city. Here is your starter kit. One gut punch playoff loss, one long story about the Browns, one flash of optimism, and one fan reminding you about 2016 before things get too dark. Travis, that's not wrong. That's pretty much the Cleveland fan package. And the people there know it better than anybody. That's why the radio reactions were funny. They weren't being mean. They were being honest in the way only a city can be honest about itself. Cleveland fans know what heartbreak looks like. They know what resilience looks like, too. That's the thing people from outside the city don't always understand. It's not just a struggling sports town. It's a town full of people who keep showing up anyway. They keep caring anyway. They keep believing anyway. That's what makes the place special. Jason, that's why the Browns conversation always hits so hard. If you really want to test whether somebody loves football, tell them to be a Browns fan. That's devotion on hard mode. That's faith without immediate evidence. And yet the dog pound exists, the energy exists, the loyalty exists. You wore a Tim Couch jersey to school like it was a superhero cape. That says everything, Travis. I absolutely did. I wore that thing proudly. And that's the funny beauty of being a fan when you're a kid. You don't calculate, you don't hedge, you don't protect yourself emotionally. You just love your team because they're yours. You attach yourself to those players, those colors, those Sundays, those little hopes. And Cleveland gave me all of that. So even when the teams break your heart, the love doesn't go away. That's why I'll always ride for that city. The people are too good not to. Jason, that's really the core of it. Cleveland is easy to root for because the people are easy to root for. They're friendly, they're intense, they care, they know the games, they take pride in the city, and they carry sports like part of their identity. There are places where fandom feels performative. Cleveland doesn't feel like that. It feels inherited, it feels lived in, it feels like something passed from one generation to the next. Travis, 100%. And again, that's what I wanted to share, not some grand conversion, just a piece of my life. That's why we've done other stuff too. Tennis, baseball, all kinds of things. You've seen us at the US Open. You've seen us at games in New York. We've done the Guardians and Yankees before. I like bringing her to sports because sports have always been one of the great joys in my life. They're fun, they're emotional, they're communal, and every arena has its own personality. I like sharing that. Jason, and from the outside, it looked like you two were having a good time despite the score. Although I do need you to address the photo, the slumped pose. The internet was convinced you were either asleep, spiritually defeated, or contemplating the fragile nature of hope itself. Travis, it was none of the above and all of the above. I wasn't asleep. I was watching a team I wanted to win get repeatedly punched in the mouth by a Knicks team that refused to miss. That face was not sleep. That was frustration. That was, you have got to be kidding me in human form. That was every fan who has ever sat through a playoff game thinking, if the next possession doesn't go our way, I may actually melt into this chair. Jason, which naturally led to the next stage of the internet cycle memes. And once the meme machine gets you, there is no escape. Inside the NBA did their whole gone fishing treatment, and honestly, those people are elite at what they do. They know exactly how to turn a single captured expression into a cultural artifact. Travis, they're the best. Whoever is working on that stuff over there is hilarious. Because once you've already lost, once your team already got handled, the only healthy move left is to laugh. And I can laugh at that stuff. If you're gonna get maimed, at least let it be funny. They got the slumped pose, the disheveled look, the whole thing. It was perfect. Painful, but perfect. Jason, the other image people obsessed over was Taylor in the Knicks gear. And of course, the internet turned that into its own referendum, as if a jersey choice at a basketball game is some declaration of geopolitical allegiance. Travis, yeah, people read way too much into that. It was a fun moment. The Knicks got her in a jersey. Big deal. We got to take a picture with players she's familiar with. Guys I've loved watching for years. Guys like Carmelo and Amore, who were some of my favorites. If somebody says, hey, put this on for a photo, you do it and enjoy the moment. Plus, she has real New York ties. So for her, it wasn't some random team she'd never seen before. She knows that world. She's been around it. She's watched the Knicks before. So people trying to turn that into some bigger story are just doing what the internet does. Jason, it also says something about the way sports intersect with celebrity now. A jersey isn't just a jersey. It's interpreted like a statement. A game appearance isn't just attendance. It's decoded like a campaign, but sometimes it really is as simple as two people going somewhere fun, enjoying the environment, taking a photo, and leaving with a memory. Travis, that's exactly it. And honestly, one of the coolest parts of it for me was just being back in that arena, back in that environment, back in a place that takes me right back to being a kid. There's something about walking into a hometown sports venue that collapses time a little bit. You're an adult now. You've lived a lot of life. You've done things. But then you walk in and there's a part of you that is immediately 10 years old again. You remember where you sat, who took you, what the sounds felt like, what the players looked like, how giant everything seemed. That feeling never fully leaves. Jason, that's so true. You go back into those buildings and you're not just attending a game, you're reconnecting with your own history. You remember being little, looking up at the lights, feeling like this was the biggest stage imaginable. You remember the snacks, the jerseys, the tunnel, the introductions, the scoreboard, the whole sensory package. So even if your team loses, there's still something meaningful about being there because it reconnects you to that version of yourself. Travis, that's why I'll always love it. Sports at their best are memory factories. They give you these snapshots that live forever. Some are wins, some are losses, some are funny, some are brutal, but they all matter. And going back to Cleveland with somebody I care about and sharing that atmosphere, even in a loss, was still one of those memories. Jason, and then because this show moves like a sports bar with no walls, we pivot from playoff basketball and celebrity memes right into the NFL schedule release because that's where the sports world always ends up eventually. The schedule came out, and suddenly everybody becomes an analyst, a win-loss predictor, a travel expert, and a rest day mathematician all at the same time. It's one of the great annual traditions. Teams release dramatic hype videos, fans instantly decide whether they've been disrespected, and players act like they're not checking the primetime games, even though everybody checks the primetime games. Travis, everybody checks them. Any player who says he doesn't is lying. The first thing you look for is the big ones. Primetime division games, holiday games, the places you know are going to be loud, the stretches that are going to test you. You're building the emotional map of the season as soon as that schedule drops. You're asking, where are the tough turns? Where are the breathers? Where's the cold weather grind? Where are the short weeks? Where are the chances to get healthy? Where are the moments everybody's going to be watching? Jason, and for Kansas City, the answer is basically this. Everybody is going to be watching a lot. 6 primetime games, week 1 on Monday night, week 2 on Sunday night. That's what happens when you've built a dynasty-level presence. The league knows people will tune in. Networks know people will tune in. Streaming services know people will tune in. You become appointment television. Travis, that's the reality of winning. If you're playing meaningful football every year, if you've got a quarterback like Pat, if people expect big moments every time you take the field, then you're going to get those slots. And honestly, I enjoy it. Those games feel different. They carry a little extra edge. The preparation feels the same because you have to prepare no matter what, but the stage is bigger. The lights are brighter, the crowd is louder. It feels like the whole football world is focused on that one game. Jason, the immediate question everybody had, of course, was whether Patrick Mahomes would be fully ready for week 1, because once the schedule gets announced, every fan starts treating these dates like guaranteed chapters in a movie. They want the opening scene to be perfect. Monday night, division opponent, full spotlight, quarterback red banners, metaphorically flying. Travis, I'll say it like this. That man works his tail off. Nobody needs to worry about his commitment. Nobody needs to worry about whether he's putting in the time. He attacks rehab, recovery, preparation, all of it the same way he attacks everything else. So, yeah, I like where we're at. But football always humbles people who talk too early. You take it one day at a time, 1 week at a time, and you get ready to roll. Jason, very diplomatic, very corporate, but fair enough. Then you look at the first chunk of the schedule, and it's fascinating because right away you're balancing excitement against wear and tear. Two primetime games to open, then some regular window games. Then you get hit with the early bye, and that always creates debate because players tend to have strong feelings about bye week timing. Travis, earlier in my career, I always liked the late bye better because it felt like a real reset when your body was worn down. You get to that point in the season and everybody's carrying something. So having that little oasis in the middle of the grind feels huge. But at this point, I've also learned that you can find rest in different pockets if the schedule gives you some help. If you've got Thursday games later, if you've got a mini bye built in somewhere, if there are stretches where the travel isn't brutal, those things matter too. You stop looking at the bye in isolation, you start looking at the season structurally. Jason, that's what veterans understand. Younger players think in simpler terms, late bye good, early bye bad. Older players know the body experiences the schedule in texture, not just dates. A Thursday night game changes your recovery rhythm. A long road stretch changes your recovery rhythm. Consecutive physical opponents change your recovery rhythm. So you start scanning for hidden edges, Travis, exactly. And one of the weird things about this schedule is how late it starts and how far it pushes into January. That threw me off. In my mind, the season opener always lives in those early September dates. Single digits, that's what feels normal. Then all of a sudden, you're looking at a season that starts later, stretches deeper, and now the Super Bowl is sitting there on Valentine's Day. It just messes with your mental calendar a little bit. Jason, it does feel strange. For a lot of people, Valentine's Day has always lived closer to NBA All-Star Weekend in their minds, not the Super Bowl. But the NFL calendar keeps expanding. 17 games became the normal. 18 weeks became the normal. People talk openly about 18 games like it's inevitable. They want that President's Day weekend alignment eventually. The league is always inching toward more inventory, more windows, more spectacle. Travis, that's the business. And as players, you adapt to what the season becomes. You don't spend a lot of energy wishing it were the old version. You just figure out how to manage the new one. But yeah, when you see 2 January games and a February 14th Super Bowl, it makes you pause. It feels like the whole season has slid a little farther down the calendar than your instincts expect. Jason, then you look at the late season stretch, and that's where it really jumps. Thanksgiving night in Buffalo. That's one of those games that feels mythic before it even happens. Cold weather, holiday stage, a massive quarterback matchup, an energized crowd, all the ingredients for one of those games people remember. Travis, those are the fun ones, man. Pat versus Josh is always going to bring a certain level of electricity. Everybody knows what those games can become. And you put that on Thanksgiving night in Buffalo with a new stadium atmosphere, with fans all fired up after spending the day eating and watching football. Yeah, that's going to be crazy. That's one of those games where you know the whole country is going to be locked in. Jason, and then the league does what the league always does now. It stacks the spectacle. You come out of that and roll into another short week, another national window, another quality opponent. Bills, then Rams, then a mini bye, then Bengals. That's not just a stretch. That's a credibility exam. Travis, it is. And that's the kind of stretch players circle because you know those games are going to mean something. You know they'll reveal where your team really is. Anybody can feel good in October if the matchups break right. But when you get into late November and December and you're seeing playoff caliber opponents in compressed windows, that's when the season starts asking hard questions. Are you disciplined? Are you healthy enough? Can you recover fast? Can you execute when everybody's tired? Can you win when the entire week feels like a sprint? Jason, that's where contenders separate themselves because late season football is more than strategy. It's resource management. It's emotional management. It's who still trusts their system when they're banged up. It's who can prepare efficiently on short rest. It's who can keep the locker room steady when the stakes rise. And that's why schedule release does matter, even if people overdo it. You're not predicting the whole season, but you are identifying where the season could get shaped. Travis, absolutely. And those are the games players want, even if they're hard. People act like guys only want easy schedules. That's not true. You want meaningful football. You want big atmospheres. You want the games that remind you why you do this? Sure, everybody wants their body to survive. Everybody wants reasonable rest. But if you're a competitor, you also want the ones that matter. Jason, which brings us to the newer modern obsession, net rest days. Fans love a spreadsheet. They love a hidden number that supposedly explains destiny. Now, everybody is calculating who has the friendliest rest differential, who is allegedly being set up, who got burned by the schedule makers, whose opponents have extra time, whose turnaround is the worst. Travis, I just don't buy into it that much. I really don't. I understand the logic. Rest matters, recovery matters. Nobody in the league would deny that. But at some point, football is football. Everybody is bruised. Everybody is dealing with short weeks and long weeks and weird travel and injuries and unforeseen stuff. You can't spend the season mentally outsourcing your performance to a rest chart. The schedule is what it is. You line up and play. If you're healthy, great. If you're banged up, welcome to the NFL. That's part of it. Jason, I think fans like net rest because it offers a clean external explanation before games are even played. It's comforting. It says, here is a number that proves why my team has it hard. And maybe there's some truth to it. Over a full season, maybe there are measurable edges. But football seasons never unfold cleanly enough for one number to explain much on its own. Travis, that's exactly it. You can prove almost anything with numbers if you isolate it the right way. But once the season starts, what matters is execution, depth, health coaching, discipline, the random bounce of the ball, who loses a left tackle in warm-ups, who gets hot in the red zone, who turns it over in week 11, who figures something out in December. There's too much chaos. That's why I don't like giving too much emotional energy to schedule grievances before the season even starts. Jason, and that's part of being in the league long enough. Veterans, stop romanticizing fairness. The NFL is not a fairness machine. It's a machine. It keeps moving. It doesn't care if your bye came early, if your opponent had 4 more recovery days, if your travel schedule is annoying, if your Thursday game came at the wrong time. It just keeps going. Your job is to survive inside it. Travis, exactly. And honestly, that mindset is freeing. Once you stop asking for perfect conditions, you can focus fully on what actually helps you win. Sleep, treatment, communication, knowing the plan, trusting your teammates, playing smart, taking care of your body. That's productive. Complaining about the arrangement of the calendar doesn't get you much. Jason, it's also funny how quickly the conversation around Christmas changed. There was a time when everyone assumed the NFL would seize every holiday forever. Now you see a year without a Christmas game for a team and fans act like it's a gift from heaven. Travis, it kind of is, but not in the way people think. It's not like you wake up Christmas morning and the whole day is yours with nothing football related on it. You still have obligations. You still have preparation. You still have practice depending on the calendar. But yes, not having to play on Christmas does give you a little more normalcy. And in this league, any little piece of normalcy matters. Even if it's just a practice day instead of a full game day operation, it changes the rhythm for your family and your own headspace. Jason, that's another part fans don't always see. The schedule release is entertainment for them, but for players, it becomes the emotional architecture of your year. It tells you where your anniversaries land, what holidays get interrupted, which family plans are impossible, what stretches will feel endless, and when you might actually be able to breathe. Travis, that's a great way to put it. It's not just football dates, it's life arrangement. And once the games start, everything moves fast. So when the schedule comes out, you're not just looking at opponents. You're looking at your year. You're seeing where the pressure points are going to be, where the body's going to need help, where the mind's going to need help, where the family's going to need patience. Jason, that's why there's a sneaky connection between the two halves of this whole conversation, the Cleveland game and the NFL schedule. On the surface, one is celebrity at a playoff game content and the other is football logistics. But underneath both is the same idea. Sports are never just the game. Their memory, identity, home fatigue, ritual, community expectations, cameras, jokes, family, travel, history, and all the emotional residue that comes with caring deeply about something unpredictable. Travis, that's exactly right. Sports are layered. A night at a basketball game is about the basketball, sure. But it's also about where you are, who you're with, what that place means to you, what everybody watching thinks it means, what story they build around it, and what you personally carry into the building from your own life. Same with football. The schedule is dates and opponents, but it's also all the hidden stuff around those dates and opponents. That's why people love sports so much. They hold all these meanings at once. Jason, and that's probably why the internet got so obsessed with this one appearance. It wasn't just Taylor and Travis sitting at a game. It was pop culture meeting hometown loyalty, celebrity meeting blue-collar sports pain, romance meeting arena nostalgia, memes meeting actual fandom. It gave everybody something to latch onto. Travis, and the best part is, underneath all the noise, it still was what it was, a fun night at a game in my hometown. That's what I'll remember first. Not the tweet, not the camera shot, not the meme, not the incorrect city reference. I'll remember being back there, hearing that crowd, feeling that playoff tension, and getting to share that part of my life with somebody I care about. Jason, even if Cleveland fans would have preferred the memory came with a win and not a Knicks shooting exhibition. Travis, yeah, that would have been nice. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But that's sports. You don't get to script the score. You only get the experience. Sometimes the experience is joy. Sometimes it's pain. Sometimes it's both in the same 2-hour window. Jason, and in Cleveland, pain with loyalty is practically a dialect. Travis, it really is. But there's love in that too, real love. The kind that doesn't disappear just because it isn't always rewarded. And that's why I'll keep going back. That's why I'll keep showing people that city. That's why I'll always speak up when somebody gets the hometown wrong. Because those roots matter. Jason, so to sum it all up in the most honest way possible, you went back to Cleveland, brought someone important into a part of your world, Watched a Knicks team that looks terrifyingly legit put on a clinic in tempo, defense, and timely shot making. Got irritated by an announcer confusing Cleveland Heights with Shaker Heights. Got immortalized by the meme industrial complex, accidentally gave sports radio a full week of material, reminded everyone that Browns fandom is one of the purest forms of emotional endurance, and then immediately shifted gears into preparing for yet another season where your team will live under the primetime lights. Travis, that sounds about right. Welcome to modern sports life. One minute you're courtside getting roasted by the internet because your team can't buy a stop, and the next minute you're studying the football calendar and figuring out how to survive a late season gauntlet. It's all connected, it's all crazy, and honestly, I wouldn't trade it, Jason, that's the thing. As wild as the attention gets, as exhausting as the schedule gets, as ruthless as the memes get, there's still something deeply fun about all of it. Because if you strip away the noise, what remains is the same old heartbeat that got us here in the first place. Games matter, places matter, people matter, and the feelings are real. Travis. Always. That's why people care. And that's why these moments land. Whether it's a playoff game in Cleveland or a Monday night opener in Kansas City, the stage changes, but the emotion doesn't. You show up. You compete. You care. You remember. Jason, and sometimes if you're unlucky, you also get turned into an inside the NBA graphic. Travis, if that's the cost, I can live with it. Just get my hometown right next time. Jason, Cleveland Heights, baby. Travis, Cleveland Heights, baby. And flee to the Cleve. Jason, there it is. Now they get the reference. Travis, and now we move on, because that's what sports teaches you too. Enjoy the good nights, laugh at the rough ones, learn from both, and keep it moving. The Knicks are rolling, the playoffs are heating up, the NFL calendar is set. The city of Cleveland remains one of the realest sports towns in America, and the season ahead is going to ask every contender whether they're built to carry the weight that comes with expectation. That's the beauty of all of it. Nobody gets to skip the test. Not the stars, not the fans, not the teams, not the cities. Everybody gets revealed eventually. Jason. And maybe that's the quiet truth tying this whole conversation together. New York looked like a team being revealed in the best possible way. They looked complete, composed, and connected. Cleveland looked like a team, and maybe even a city, living in that familiar tension between hope and heartbreak. Kansas City, meanwhile, is heading into another year where anything short of a deep run will feel like underachievement. Those are different stories, but they're all pressure stories. And pressure, more than anything, is what sports magnifies. Travis, that's why the moments matter. Under pressure, a team's habits get exposed. Under pressure, a player's toughness gets tested. Under pressure, a fan base reveals what it really is. And I'll tell you this. Cleveland fans showed exactly what they always show. They cared. They brought juice. They stayed loud. They took the hit. And they'll be back. That's what real fans do. Jason, same principle in football. Everyone can talk big in May when the schedule drops. Everyone can circle wins and losses and argue about rest and broadcast windows. But once the pads come on and the weather shifts and bodies ache and the games pile up, all the preseason certainty gets stripped away. Then it's just about who can stay true to themselves when the season gets heavy. Travis. Which is why I don't waste too much energy on the noise around the schedule. I respect it. I study it. I understand what it means. But I know the real story won't be written by release day reactions. It'll be written on those Sunday nights, those Thursday nights, those cold road trips, those short weeks, those fourth quarters where you either execute or you don't. That's where everything gets answered. Jason. Same with the Knicks. Everybody can debate them now. East versus West. Stars versus depth. Records versus momentum. But the answer will come possession by possession, the way it always does. And if they keep defending like this, keep controlling games like this, keep burying teams emotionally when they sense weakness, they're going to make that answer very uncomfortable for whoever stands in front of them. Travis, they really are. Watching them live made that clear. They're not just talented, they're coherent. And coherent teams in the playoffs are scary because they don't beat themselves much. They make you solve them. Cleveland couldn't solve them that night. Maybe another team can. But somebody's going to have to earn it. Jason, which is the final lesson here. Whether it's basketball in May or football in December, whether it's a superstar couple on camera or a veteran tight end studying a schedule, whether it's a hometown crowd hoping for a miracle or a championship team preparing for another primetime run, sports keeps coming back to the same simple truth. Nothing meaningful is given. Everything reveals character, and the reason we keep watching is because we want to see who holds their shape when the lights get brightest. Travis, that's why we love it, man, because for all the noise, for all the business, for all the storylines, the game still tells the truth in the end. Jason, even if the truth that night was that the Knicks were on fire and you were one missed three away from entering witness protection. Travis.
Fair.
Very fair. Jason, and with that, let's call it what it was. A big night, a tough loss, a great atmosphere, a reminder of where you come from, a reminder of how much sports can still make grown men feel like kids, and a pretty clear sign that the months ahead, both in the NBA playoffs and in the NFL season to come, are going to be packed with pressure, noise, spectacle, and the kind of moments people remember long after the final score. Travis, couldn't have said it better. Well, maybe I could have, but you did fine, Jason. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Travis, Don't get used to it.